If you're a young person, and I mean late teens or in your 20s, and you have any interest in owning a sailboat, maybe living on a sailboat, even traveling around on a sailboat, I'm going to tell you how to do it. I met this couple in Manhattan. I remember pulling up to Manhattan for the first time on a sailboat and saying to my co-captain, let's park next to someone who looks like we'd get along with him. You gotta find your people, right? The mooring field on the Hudson at the time was $30 a night, and for that, you get a mooring ball, so you don't have to anchor. You just rock up and tie your boat to the ball. You also get access to the marina, so laundry and showers, things like that. You use your dinghy to go into the marina from the mooring field, and then you step on land, and boom, a couple blocks from Central Park. The subway is right there. $30 a night for one of the most expensive cities in the world. Anyway, we parked next to an old ratty looking sailboat that looked like it hadn't moved in months. And within an hour, we were having a beer with the owners. A nice couple who lived on that $2,000 boat right in the heart of New York City. Further south in the Carolinas, I met this kid, 18 years old, rocking along on his 28-foot sailboat that he got for $500. He got a brand new outboard motor on it, so it was reliable, and he was just going up and down the East Coast, anchoring for free everywhere, and taking showers with hot water that he heated on his propane stove. He sailed beside me all the way to Florida and was just out there living his best life the whole time. Living on a sailboat can be super cheap, and if you can outfit it with a little bit of solar and a battery, you can even do your remote job over Starlink. Anchoring is usually free depending on where you are, and if you have a dinghy you can tow behind you, you can get anywhere you need to get. Most towns have a free dinghy dock for you to park at, and then you can Uber anywhere else. So if that's something you might want to do, you'll have to find a boat. And while there's not any perfect recipe for a boat to do all those things, there are some key ingredients that you'll need. Obviously cheap, but what makes a good first boat for a young person to live on? My first requirement is water depth. A sailboat has a keel, so the wind can't knock it over. And those keels come in a range of sizes. You'll need to know how deep you can be based on where you want to go on your sailboat. Let's take my New York friends as an example. They knew they'd want to be in New York, so if you go to maps.garmin.com, we can check the water depth of where we want to be. The mooring field here, as we can see, is 16 feet at its lowest, so we have 16 feet of water to work with. If they decided to get out of the Hudson River, because the Hudson River is pretty rolly and bouncy, and go spend some time in the more protected East River, we could go over here and look and see that it's 11 feet in this anchorage. It goes right down to 4 feet. So this anchorage, specifically, you'll need a sailboat that needs less than 4 feet. Let's go look further south. You say you want to be in Florida. Fort Pierce is a nice spot where a lot of people go to live on sailboats with a free anchorage and a great dinghy dock that you can use to get into town. I know this anchorage is popular and we see a lot of 5 foot or 5'5", so I'd want to keep the draft of the sailboat under that. Once you know how deep the water is where you intend to be on your boat, you have some restrictions to use when you go shopping. A lot of fast, racy sailboats have keels well over 6 feet, so we know we can avoid those. The next thing is to look at what's for sale in your desired area that you want to live on a boat and what you can afford. And that's going to be a lot of different boats. So let's talk about the most common one that people end up buying. A 22-footer is kind of king in this area. If you can find a 24 or a 28, that's great. But what we want here is quality over quantity. If you can find a 22 that's in much better shape than the 28, you may have to live with less space to get a better boat. And king of the 22s for a starter boat is going to be the popular Catalina 22. They made so many of these you literally see them everywhere. But just about any small sailboat looks just like this one. You can find the 22 for less than $5,000. And while this one in the video is a newer model, the older one is about the same, just a bit older. These weigh less than 2,500 pounds, so if it comes with a trailer, you can tow it with a normal truck or an SUV. They're 22 feet long and less than 8 feet wide, so it's legal to tow down the road. Up front, you have the forward deck, where you'll be doing your anchoring and tying off to mooring balls. A hatch there, that's above the Vibra sleeping area, and the mast in the middle. Most of these small boats are set up so that you can put the mast up and down without any special equipment. So if you have to take it down, It's not the end of the world. Maybe you got to get under a bridge or something. At the back, you have the cockpit where you steer and you sail from, and it becomes your living room. So most often you'll see people use a tarp or something to drape and make a tent over this area so that they can still use it when it rains. You eat out here, you entertain out here, and you sit out here at night watching the sunset and looking up at the stars. Most of your time is spent out here. One of the great things about small sailboats is that they usually have an outboard motor on the back. Bigger boats have engines inside, but with an outboard on the back, if you want a better one or yours isn't fixable, you can just unscrew it and put a new one on. It's very, very simple and easy to replace. And the motor will be small. This one is a 6 horsepower in the video, and you generally never need anything bigger than a 9.9. Horsepower doesn't matter so much on sailboats because they're a displacement hull, meaning that they don't pop up on top of the water and go really fast like a powerboat. They stay in the water, and because of that, their top speed is very limited. Sailboats are slow, so it only takes 6 horsepower to make this 22-footer move as fast as it can anyway. So a bigger engine is just more weight, no gains. This boat will go a little less than 6 knots with this engine, or less than 6 knots with 3 of these engines. It just doesn't matter. Headed inside, if you're young and thinking about a van or building a skoolie, this will be right up your alley. A small cabin with room for a small toilet. You can put a small battery system in here to power all your stuff, and a place to cook and sleep. The bonus of buying a sailboat instead of a sprinter van or a school bus is that this is already built. The walls and the electric and the plumbing are already done. For less than $5,000, sometimes less than 2, you have a ready-made little house that you can go live on, and you won't have to build anything. Plus, this house can move around wherever you want to sail it without burning fuel as long as you're sailing. People have done some amazing things with sailboat interiors too. Nature's had toilets, a couple of solar panels outside, and you could run your laptop and a Starlink setup and a little Dometic fridge and be totally off-grid. The space in here is limited, of course, but for that same price of less than $5,000, if you take your time and shop around, you may be able to find bigger and bigger boats. I had a 25-foot I was very happy with, but you can get a 30 or a 35 if you keep shopping or saving money. And while we look at boats, let's talk insurance. Your schoolie and your van are going to need to be insured to go down the road. Most of the liveaboards I've met on sailboats don't have insurance at all. Now, I'm not suggesting anything here, but anchoring in Fort Pierce or New York City, no one requires you to have insurance. There's no law that says you have to. So if you get pulled over, they're not going to ask for it in most places. If you want to stay in a marina though, the marina might require it. You might want to pay for a marina so that you can be tied to the dock permanently and plugged into their electricity and their water system and live to a little bit higher standard. But a marina can be hundreds of dollars a month. And of course, sometimes they'll want you to have insurance. Insurance comes into play too when you haul a boat out, usually once a year, so you can clean the bottom and make repairs. Because they're lifting your boat with their equipment, sometimes they'll demand that you have an insurance policy, just liability. You'll also have to learn about boats, how they work and how to take care of them, how to stay safe. And honestly, they aren't much different than learning to live in a van or a schoolie. The boat has a small gasoline engine you'll have to maintain, but if it's a 2-stroke, there aren't any oil changes or oil filters. The boat will have through hulls. These are holes in the bottom of the boat underneath, usually very few, 1 or 2 on a boat this small. They let the sink drain and things like that. And you'll need to replace those when needed and make sure that you don't sink. The boat will have a mast and rigging and sails, and you'll have to eventually, and sometimes slowly, learn how that all works. But it's worth it because the first time you sail from Miami to the Bahamas, your whole life will change, your view of the world, everything. It's such an amazing experience. I'm currently also building an off-grid stealth box truck camper to do the whole land-based travel off-grid thing, but before I did this, I did the thing on a sailboat. That's how this channel started. If you want to go back and see that, go back to episode 18. Sailboats are awesome and can be totally rent-free if you want them to be. If you want to see my box truck build, which is almost done, check out Charlie the Truck. Let me know in the comments, would you consider a sailboat instead of a land-based option? Why or why not?